Good afternoon, this is Troy Moldy. I'm with the Pride Group and I'm here with Jeremy Peterson from Remax Results, and we are going to be doing our outreach for the month of June 2016. And today we are going to be covering just a list of things to think about prior to putting a bid in on a HUD home. A lot of what I do here as a HUD agent is help agents fix problems after they've already put in a bid, had a bid accepted, and now they're trying to move forward, but they're running into all kinds of issues. Sometimes I can help them, other times they're going to have to cancel their contract and lose the house for the buyer. And then in some cases, they cancel the contract and they lose the earnest money for their buyer as well. So today is just going to be a real quick go through on what is some good due diligence to do prior to bidding on a HUD home. One of the things that I see people do, they put in a bid and then they start finding things out and then they want to come back and renegotiate the terms. HUD won't renegotiate. So if somebody else was a second bidder in line and they checked to be a backup bid, and your buyer was the winning bidder, and then you found out there was a $10,000 assessment, for example, on a property, and so you back out, but the other bidder was aware of it and put in a bid based on knowing that, and their offer was accepted, even though that their bid may be less, they may get the property and be able to perform and be able to move forward with an informed buyer because they did their due diligence. So one thing, always do your due diligence. So let's go through the list. HOA. I always advise call the HOA, ask about pets, ask about past assessments. General rule on HUD that I have seen is if the assessment is a future benefit enjoyment to a buyer, then it's going to be prorated from the day of closing. Let me give you a couple examples. Let's just say the HOA has past due. Somebody just was not paying the monthly HOA bills. That is not a benefit to a buyer, so I've always seen HUD pay that. An example of something that would be prorated is the HOA is going to be doing an upcoming project and they're going to redo all the decks and they're going to assess each unit at $10,000. That would be a future benefit to a buyer, and so that would be prorated from the day of closing. So you want to make sure that you're checking on that. Ask about the rules. Is there anything that the HOA will tell you that may or may not work for your buyer? If it's an investor, make sure, do they allow rentals? And then I always ask too, because I've had HOAs tell me, oh yeah, you can rent the property, but they don't tell you that they're exceeded their rental cap, and so then if your investor buys the property or gets it under contract and then finds out that there's a rental cap and he can't rent, if the investor cancels, the HUD's going to keep the earnest money because for any reason, if an investor cancels, they lose their earnest money. Much more friendly to owner occupants, but for investors. So ask the HOA, do you allow rentals? What is your cap? And then lastly, buyer is responsible to pay for the HOA docs. This comes up a lot. So important to talk to your buyers. My experience has been buyers don't really care if they have to pay for the HOA docs. I guess I should say they don't, not that they don't care, but they're not as surprised. Buyers get mad when they're surprised that they get a property under contract and then the agent says, hey, I just found out we got to pay for the HOA docs and they're $600. Not a happy buyer. If they know up front that that's part of the deal before bidding and they still proceed forward with bidding, it's not a big deal. So HOA, do your due diligence, call the HOA, find out what's going on, let the buyer know that they are going to be responsible to pay for those HOA docs. City, always call the city. Ask if there's anything you need to know about the property. Is there any upcoming assessments, past assessments, past due water bills, unpaid water bills? That would be something that I've seen not a benefit to a buyer. So I've seen that get paid. Make sure you tell your title company to forward that water bill to HUD prior to closing. And then also ask, does the city have mandatory city inspection? I know some cities will have, they require that the sewer be inspected. You have other cities that are going to have your TISH reports. Is it a vacant building? Vacant building fee would be something that a buyer would have to assume. Is it a category 1, 2, and 3? I have heard of stories where agents have done no due diligence and they purchase a HUD home, and HUD is exempt from these inspections and reports, and your paperwork you sign says so. So, um, what happens that I heard was the buyer closed on the home, and then the city came and dozed the house. So I mean, you got a buyer that's got a mortgage on a property, and the city dozing it. So pretty serious stuff. Call the city, especially in like St. Paul and stuff like that, where they've got more rules. Call your city and ask. Make sure you know what is going on with this property prior to bidding, because I mean, I couldn't imagine being an agent that just sold a house to a buyer, the property closed, and now you have the city dozing the house and your buyer calling you saying, what the heck? Not a situation that any of us agents want to be in. County, call the county, ask the same questions. What's going on with the property? Is there anything you can tell me about it? And lastly, continuing, discussing with the buyer that the property in its as-is condition. The buyer will not get permission to fix anything, nor will HUD. You have to perform in its as-is condition. So if you bid on a property and then you find some things out, you can't come back and say, hey, we just found out that there's a $5,000 assessment, or we just did an inspection and the AC doesn't work. We want a $5,000 lower price. You have to either perform or cancel. There's no in between. Perform or cancel. So the more information you have that you can talk to your buyer about, the better. That you don't have any surprises. So really look at the property, go through the property condition, and I've done some video on property condition. You can go back on previous videos and watch that. But really know what's going on with the property and talk to your buyer. I've seen it happen where agents will just throw in a bid without any information, and then they find out information, want to renegotiate. I'll tell them they can't. The buyer wants to cancel, and then there's a backup bidder that was informed, and they got their bid accepted, and the previous buyer is mad because they lost the house because they didn't put in an informed bid. So think about that. HUD will never ever renegotiate. Once you put in a price, it is what it is. Perform or cancel. Talk to your buyers about utility activation. There's going to be some expense there if they have to hire a plumber to come out and de-winterize a property for their inspection, put the utilities in their name, and I've done other videos on that, so you can watch previous video on utility activation. Again, this is kind of like with the HOA, if the buyer knows what they're getting into, knows that there's going to be these costs. I've got that on my agent disclosure. It's somewhere. I'm just pulling a number out of a hat. So if you've got an HOA and then a buyer's going to have an inspection and activate utilities, they could be spending a $500 to $1,000 on getting all of these things activated and things like this. So as long as the buyer goes in and knows that there's going to be more expenses than maybe a typical transaction for me to do my due diligence, they're not going to be mad because they went into the transaction knowing that. When people find that out after they're already into the transaction, buyers are not happy. They're asking their agents to pay for it, and I have agents mad at me. But I've got these supplements explaining all of this. So, do your due diligence, talk to your buyers, make sure that they're informed. By informing your buyers and doing your due diligence, it's going to keep you out of the hot seat, keep you from getting sued, keep you having some really awkward situations with your broker. HUD transactions are great to do. They're fun to do. They're super easy to do. As a buyer's agent, you can drive these transactions. You don't have to wait for a listing agent to help you. We're certainly here to do that, but that's one of the reasons why I started selling HUD homes 8 years ago, is I never had to wait for the listing agent. Sometimes the REO agents were not responsive, and I could just jump right in and get these deals done and drive it right to the closing table. So they're fun transactions, but make sure you do your due diligence. Super important subject. And that is it for this month's outreach. Jeremy's just kind of giving me the thumbs up, nodding his head. Let me just see if he's got anything to add. You got anything that you got to add over there, Jeremy?
No, great training, Troy.
So Jeremy says we're good to go. So that's going to be it for this week and this month. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you guys next month.